Hello and welcome to Cast Iron, a podcast all about metal. As usual, I am still Alan Williamson and I'm joined by Lewis Clark. Lewis, how you doing?
Very well, thank you, buddy. How are you getting on?
Right, okay. So, there needs to be a bit of preface to this. So, I am moving to Australia in about 2 days.
Yeah.
First of all, apologies if my voice sounds a little bit tinny. I don't have my big podcasting microphone, but if you saw the shipping costs to Australia, you would understand that as well. So it's going to be a little bit reedy, a bit echoey because all of my stuff is left to flat, so that's not absorbing the background noise.
Yep.
But we are here. We're here recording a very exciting double episode. But to those of you listening at home, it'll seem like a single episode.
yeah, hopefully. Well, hopefully. We'll see how we feel at the end of this.
See how we feel. I hate you. I don't want to do these anymore. So this week we're going to be covering one of my all-time favourites, and hopefully Lewis doesn't hate it too much. We're listening to The Jester Race by In Flames. So In Flames then. I've got my In Flames t-shirt on. I've actually got two of my brothers got me the same t-shirt 1 year after another, so I'm wearing one of those shirts.
Well, there you go. You can keep one as a pyjama top. It's sorted.
Well, actually, you joke, but this one's got a hole in it, so like, it's new pyjama time.
Yeah, sorted. There you go, buddy. What's your spiel with In Flames then? Like your personal experience with them, because I don't have too much personally.
What's my spiel?
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure when I first got into them. It might be something embarrassing, like the fact that Embody the Invisible was in Tony Hawk's Underground. But the first In Flames album I listened to was Colony. And I think before that I might have dipped into a couple of tracks here and there, but I found them quite inaccessible at first, actually.
Right, okay,
and
that's interesting.
For the longest time, I could not get into the Jester Race.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and it never would have been one of my favourites. And then I think a couple of years after I'd got into it, I came back to it. And by that stage in my musical life, my taste had matured a bit, and I was able to pick up what I really liked. Now, I'm not a big fan of really high-pitched, screamy, scraggly vocals.
Okay.
Which has probably been borne out across most of the episodes. I like clean singing, and I like people who are good singers.
Yeah.
Without having that experience of what that kind of screaming vocal is actually like, you could understand how somebody like me would just bounce off the Jester Race. But then a couple of albums later, a bit more used to their sort of classic metal sound, and albums like Colony, Horacle, even Root to Remain, that kind of thing. I came back to the Jester Race, and I totally loved it. And now, every year, my brothers and I, let me see, let me get my... got a note here of we rank the In Flames albums from top to bottom. We kind of argue about what are the definitive best ones, and Jester Race always makes it to our top list.
That's interesting. So, as far as I'm aware with In Flames, so like my personal experience of them is very limited. I've got my first flatmate, who's a very good friend of mine. He's big into In Flames, and he introduced me to Clayman, which is his favourite In Flames record.
Okay.
I bought that off the back of his recommendation, and I do really like it. It's a great record, don't get me wrong. But comparing it to this, it is a dramatically different record. So I was always under the impression that In Flames have quite a dramatic change in like tone and sound as their career progresses.
Is
that correct?
That's one way of putting it. Yeah. If you listen to the latest In Flames album, which is called Battles, it sounds like a Linkin Park-esque pop metal album, and it's
really
nothing.
Wow.
It's not. So the first albums, you've got an EP called Subterranean, and then Lunar Strain, which is their first album, and it's got Mikael Stana from Dark Tranquillity on vocals, and that one I just never got into. Not a big fan of Lunar Strain. Then you get Jester Race, which is the first album with Anders Frieden, and that's probably the beginning of their what you could consider the classic In Flames sound, and it's generally recognised as a landmark album in sort of Swedish melodeath, along with the big three of Gothenburg metal. You've got In Flames, you've got At the Gates, and their album Slaughter of the Soul would be there, one around this time. And you've also got Dark Tranquillity, and their big album around that time was The Gallery.
Yes.
So In Flames kind of go, you've got this, which is everybody's favourite In Flames melodeath album. Then you've got Horical, which is more of a transitional album. And then you've got Colony and Clayman, which I think that's when they really mastered their sound, and that's the most Gothenburg of Gothenburg sounds. Certainly Colony, and definitely Clayman as well. I mean, you've got it at home, so tracks like Bullet Ride, those kind of ones are real classic. Swims on that one as well. Yeah, there's a lot of it's good. I'm not even looking at my iTunes library. I'm just trying to see what I can remember to challenge myself. So after Clayman, you've got Reroute to Remain,
which I remember Reroute to Remain because it was out during that early 2000s sort of big Kerrang boom.
Yes, it's around the time of albums like Soilworks, Figure Number 5, the video for Trigger of Reroute to Remain, Soilwork appear in that video, and In Flames appear in the video for Rejection Rule.
That's interesting.
So if you want to know what In Flames should sound like, you should just listen to Soilwork, because it basically kept the style and improved upon it. I love Reroute to Remain, but I can understand why In Flames fans of the older stuff don't like it. Then you get into they go a bit off the rails. You've got albums like Soundtrack to Your Escape, which is one of their weakest and not great. This is where my brother's going to text me after this comes out, stop us, In Flames are fucking amazing, all their albums are great. But they do hit a bit of a mid-career slide. You've got Come Clarity, which is probably their best known track, Take This Life.
Yeah, I remember Take This Life. I remember the video.
It's good shit. Take This Life is a good song, and Come Clarity is pretty good, but they just something happens where they kind of lose the thread a bit. Yeah. And their later albums, like A Sense of Purpose, Sounds of a Playground Fading, they have good songs, but there's so many boring bits that they're no longer good albums. Then you've got Siren Charms, which came out in 2014, and is probably one of their worst. That's where it gets very pop metal-y.
When did the founding guitarist leave? Is it? I can't remember his name now.
Yes. Okay, so I've got. Don't worry, I have notes. So the main guitarist for a while it was Jesper Stromblad. And Bjorn Galotta. Jesper left after. I think it was Sounds of the Playground Fading. He left.
Right. Okay.
I will go on Wikipedia now. Click, clack, clock. You can hear all my typing now because but he founded the band.
Yeah.
And he left. Okay, the last album he was on looks like it was A Sense of Purpose.
Right. Okay.
And then he left, and then he did Sounds of a Playground Fading, which is a couple of really good songs. But Bjorn is on the Jester Race, but he is the drummer. And this is the first album where he appears, and he later does the guitars, and they get a different drummer. So this is the first. So the Jester Race is the first In Flames album with Anders Frieden on vocals, and also with Bjorn Galotta. But he's on the drums here. He's not on guitars, but in later albums he is on the. Pretty sure, from in the Colony era, he's definitely on the guitars.
Oh, that's interesting.
And now he's the lead guitarist. And they've also been in various other bands that we can get into, because we've got a really good fun fact about In Flames that is going to bring our worlds of Sega fanboy stuff and metal together for an epic confrontation. So In Flames aren't what they used to be. I can appreciate the new stuff, and I understand that they don't want to release albums like the Jester Race anymore. But at the same time, whenever I listen to this, I do think, what a crying shame they don't release albums like this anymore. Yeah.
It is a very... I mean, I think as well, like for bands that have such long careers, I think I can appreciate the fact that like the longer you do it, the more you want to experiment, the more you want to sort of keep it interesting for yourself. So, undeniably those things are going to sort of change, and your sound will evolve. But at the same time, I think if you dilute what you do to the point that you've kind of lost what people liked about you, then obviously at the same time it can work against you.
I think it's hard to know what metal fans want sometimes, because especially fans of bands like Metallica and Megadeth, any of that kind of old school thrash. So Megadeth have had their ups and downs, but I think actually they've had quite a consistent career.
Yeah.
But Metallica obviously went from sort of classic thrash into that more we've studied classical music at high school, metal, and then into what's basically hard rock.
Yeah, essentially.
And I'm not quite sure what Metallica fans want, because you want a band to have fun, and you want to hear that fun come across whenever they're playing that album. And In Flames have said in many interviews, like, that's not the kind of music we want to play anymore. This is what we want to do, and they do a lot more clean vocals. It's a lot less Melodeath. It's a lot less Gothenburg metal, and I think that's okay, because it doesn't diminish the old albums, but it makes you think, like, do people really want 10 different versions of the Jester race with the same riff?
Yeah, I think,
because if we're going to talk here, like, some of the riffs in this album are pretty samey. To the point where I had to listen to some of the tracks back to back to go, which is which? And this is like one of my favourite albums of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it makes me wonder what people really want. Do they just want the same album 10 times over, or do they actually want the feeling of listening to something really new and fresh and exciting for the first time?
Yeah, I think that's more like what you're getting at there. I think they do want, obviously, that heavier sound, but at the same time, I think they want it to sound fresh. They want it to sound like it's In Flames' early career once again, like that renewed energy and stuff.
And I think there are the frustrating thing about In Flames isn't that they don't want to do it; it's that there are bands that have evolved this sound. Soilwork.
Oh God,
Soilwork are definitely one of them who are still. Dark Tranquility, well, they have their ups and downs, and I wasn't a big fan of the At the Gates comeback, at War with Reality. I thought it had a couple
I still haven't heard it yet.
It's a couple of good songs, but it's no Slaughter of the Soul, man. But there are other bands. There's a band called Engel, which is Niklas Englund, one of the guitarists from In Flames' side project, and they do really good metal. Got bands like Disharmonia Mundi. I'm trying to think who else. There's a really good Spanish band I like called Rise to Fall, and they do really good Gothenburg style metal. They just seem to be really, if they're listening to this, you can just sort of your social media, because I have no idea where you guys are touring and when. I would say come to London. That's probably no longer true. Come to Sydney. That works out much better for me.
Yeah, it works better in your
But there are bands that are taking this style and evolving it and working with it. It just seems like In Flames have more let the ball drop rather than pass the torch. Yeah.
It's not that they have, it's not that they've really followed that style through to evolve it in any good way.
But anyway, I feel like we are getting ahead of ourselves, because we're talking about the evolution of a band. We really should be talking about their roots. So shall we?
Absolutely.
So we've already talked a bit about melodic death metal in the Heartwork episode.
Yes, we did.
But this is Gothenburg style, as in Gothenburg in Sweden. And essentially what that means for me is there's more of a Scandinavian influence. So you have more folk melodies, more jingly-jangly stuff, rather than just sort of Maiden-esque guitar harmonies.
So that's interesting that you say that, because that was something I picked up on with this in particular. And my main exposure to sort of Gothenburg Melodeath is kind of At the Gates, which I would say doesn't have that sort of folk metal quality to it.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was very taken aback by the fact that like a lot of these songs have a really sort of folky, like acoustic led, lots of melody and stuff to them. I would say, like, if you were trying to introduce someone to metal, this is a pretty good first step into something heavier, because there's an awful lot of melody, got just a focus on strong songwriting, and not so much let's be really heavy for the sake of being heavy, So I was that took me aback quite a lot, listening to the Jester race, because like just from the get go, like Moonshield is a really sort of nice lilting sort of quality to it. It's bizarrely accessible for something that has screaming vocals on it.
I think bizarrely accessible is good because it does start with that nice little lilting acoustic melody before it decides it's much happier to melt your face off.
yeah. But at the same time, like even when like you get like overdriven riffs and there's always like a lead guitar melody that sort of like keeps. There's always like a very strong melody there to like hold on to throughout the entire song. It's not. You're never really sort of like. There's not a big moment where it's just like right now, just be really heavy, loads of double bass drumming, loads of blast beats, loads of like It's
definitely not. I think In Flames are very much. Hey, here's a really good riff. Here's a riff. That's the riff for this song. Here we go. And I'm really like that. I love the simplicity of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like songwriting is such a broad thing. Like it doesn't matter if for metal in particular. I feel like there's a very sort of strange attitude in that, like, if it's not as technical and as heavy as possible, then it's not worth your time, which I think is absolute bullshit. I think if you're going to listen to heavy music, it should be varied, it should be accessible, it should be poppy sometimes, like that. I think good songwriting should have melody for you to sort of like grab onto and hold onto for the entire song, and that will stick with you for God knows how long, regardless of how technical like the production is, or like how technically proficient the musicians are. I feel like if your songwriting is strong, then that will show, regardless of the quality of the production or anything like that. So yeah,
I think it's a really interesting album and band to talk about, because In Flames probably do have a less good reputation in metal circles than they used to. Probably off the strength of this album, but also because of the perceived quality of their recent stuff. But metal is full of gatekeeping, and it's full of people complaining about genty stuff, and I've complained before about that time I listened to the Australian metal radio. It was just one note chugging.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's going to be at some point we're going to have to drop a Bring Me the Horizon album into this, and we're going to have a heated discussion about why we don't like that kind of music.
But that's an interesting like band to pick on, because that's another band that's had a very, very tumultuous sort of change of sound almost. They started off being a mathcore and deathcore band, and they've slowly become, well, kind of like a nu metal band, really.
From total shit to almost acceptable. But Moonshield's an interesting track to kick off the Jester race, because it's a classic In Flames song, but it's not actually a typical one for this album.
No, very mid-paced, I guess.
It's a bit slower paced.
Thrashy to it.
Absolutely, and a lot of these songs do have. I guess it is kind of that Iron Maiden machine gunning kind of riff. That's a very standard, but this song doesn't have that. It does. You're saying about this is a gateway drug to metal, and this song, if you got through the first 30 seconds, then maybe there's hope for you. Maybe you could be a metal fan.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the introduction, I suppose. I mean, it kind of continues as well, because we have an instrumental with the Jester's dance. It's not a particularly noteworthy track, I think. Not that it's a bad song. It's just I do love the really sort of like it's got a nice jangly melody to it, which is interesting. But it's kind of over and done with pretty quickly.
So the Jester's dance has been my ringtone for probably the past 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, because it's the only In Flames song I can get away with and work.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because you don't have a scream on it. So yeah, that's a fair point.
And it's an instrumental bridge that takes you from. I mean, I really like it, because I like that they've layered the light, more jangly, jaunty bits with the full on heavy that kind of. chugging riffing, and it's probably a good distillation of what this album's about in 2 minutes. And they come back to the idea in the Jester race, but it's interesting because they don't do a huge number of instrumental tracks. This album has 2, and obviously we'll get to Wayfarer later. But yeah, I really like the Jester's dance.
I mean, like, again, like,
2 minutes long. I think it's a bit of fun.
Talk ill will of it, but yeah, it was something that it was just one of those things because, like, as I was making notes, it was obviously it was an instrumental, and it was over in a couple of minutes, and it was just a bit like, oh, that was nice, but like it didn't feel like a proper song sort of thing. So, yeah.
I mean, there's the whole thing about the jesters and the jester heads, and so the jester head is the logo on the front of this album, and that's the In Flames mascot.
Yep.
So it's kind of, I don't know if it's meant to be like a big palace, or it always looked to me like, Tor the Shuttle Zord from Power Rangers. Like, if you had wheels in that thing, it could be trundling along. I don't know.
It's a bit Howl's Moving Castle-y.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Yeah,
Howl's moving Jester face, Black Death totem.
It's a great cover. I love it. It's a really, like, I love that classic sort of metal art.
Where so cheesy.
Brush to shit and stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. But so that's where the idea of the Jester heads comes from. That's their official fan club. And they revisit the idea with the song on Sounds of a Playground Fading called The Jester's Door. And it is a load of bollocks. So if you want to see how far down how long In Flames have been circling the bowl, you should listen to The Jester's Door after this, because it's just 2 minutes of nonsense compared to 2 minutes of more than acceptably good metal. But I think Jester Dance is a good fun track, because it's just, right, okay, we've had the acoustic bit and there's no messing about, we'll just blast in.
Yeah.
And then from
speaking
of blasting
messing
in,
about, yeah.
So you get Artifacts of the Black Rain.
God, what there's pace steps up from the get-go on this one. Lots of double bass drumming. There's a really, really strong riff that sort of you revisit quite a lot in this song. And it's got like the first solo as well. So 2 minutes in, we get the middle 8, and yeah. What I really liked about the solo on this one is it feels like it's necessary. It's not like right, okay, there's a passage here where you can do a solo, so go nuts. And it's not like that at all. It's not showing off or anything like that. It's like the solo carries an awful lot of melody. It's something that you could probably whistle along to, which I quite like.
if you're really good at whistling.
No, it's just like it's a really strong solo, and yeah. It again shows how like strong the melody and the songwriting is on this record. It's another one of those things where I was like, wow, okay. So even the solos get a chance to shine on this one, like in a similar way.
I mean, I think this one's really interesting because obviously I'm coming back to this and it's a perceived favourite album of mine, and I was thinking, I hope this doesn't turn out like when we did Bullets to Poison. I didn't like it as much. And I think this song is archetypal in Flames. This song is a good distillation of what the whole album's about. But I also think it's a really interesting prototypical song, and it feels like a band figuring their song out a bit, because you've got them 2 minutes and you get this breakdown with a big fat riff, and then it kind of just drops, and then you get that in the Maiden-esque dueling solo, and I think it's really technically impressive and fun, but I don't think it fits as well into the flow of the song compared to Lord Hypnos.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah,
and that's interesting because like, Artifact of the Black Rain. I mean, they've all got suitably metal song names, and that makes you think they're good. Yeah, even if you can't remember what they're like. But I thought it was interesting that this one didn't flow quite as well from idea to idea for me. And
okay, that's interesting.
Not to say this isn't a good song. It's just interesting, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
It feels like the solo doesn't quite nail it off the back of the track in the way that something like some of the later tracks do. So that I just find that interesting listening to it again. It's still a really good song.
Yeah. I think it might have been. Again, as a context might have been something that maybe changed that, because I listened to this off the back of listening to a progressive metal record, and I was like, I quite liked that it was a bit sort of uneven, I guess, because progressive music is like that. Is
that a progressive metal album that we're going to feature in a future episode?
Could be.
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows what that'll be? Okay.
But yeah, no, I really liked Artifacts of the Black Rain. I thought it was a good song, and I did like the fact that it was odd. I mean, like 2 minutes into the song, and there's a middle eight was like, oh, okay. It seems like that should be happening a little bit later.
This album does this a lot. It doesn't. It doesn't waste your time or your patience. And basically, if you're 2 minutes into a song with a Jester race and you haven't heard a solo yet, you're probably not getting one.
yeah, that's a fair point. The follow-up track, Graveland, I was going to say, like, this feels like sort of where In Flames is kind of heading. Like, this song shows signs of, like, later In Flames sound. It's got more of a straightforward Melodeath sort of riff to it. And it doesn't have, it loses kind of like that folk metal quality that you've been.
It's definitely more, yeah. And I mean, what I really love about this is the clangy hardcore drums at the start. I love that. You can kind of hear the guitar almost like they're out of earshot. The drums just bursts in with the riff. I really like that as an introduction. But what do you mean? And it's also got the really weird mumbly vocals that come quite a lot in this album. That becomes a little bit more apparent later, but yeah. Certainly in like songs like Dead Eternity, yeah. I can't remember which one I made the notes for that. Yeah, Spoken Word Dead Eternity definitely has that quite a lot. But yeah, like this Graveland in particular, I thought was more of a straightforward song. Like it was very much like an atypical metal song, whereas it didn't have that sort of intriguing folky quality that some of the other songs had, which I feel like is kind of the big selling point for this album for me. I think you're really right whenever you say that this is kind of where the band are heading, because that kind of it's in the chorus of Graveland, but that bend, that kind of noise, they just have a lot, and that's it's kind of a classic in Flames trope. Yeah. So it's definitely I think that's the way it's good prototype of where the band are going to go. But it's a fun track, and it doesn't stay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what I like. Another one. I mean, I enjoyed it just because it was heavy. You know, like it was like, okay, we've had a few songs where we're showing you like what makes our sound us, and now it's like, okay, let's just have fun and kind of go to town with this one. I just love the names of these tracks, and the fact it's called Graveland. It's so good. And I quite like Anders Frieden's lyrics. Assuming he did write the lyrics to this, I didn't think to look it up. But a lot of the lyric writing in this is really overwrought. It's like a Swedish guy trying to write gothic love poetry or something. It's you've spoken highly of like Anders' like lyricism and vocals in previous episodes, and I haven't. I mean, normally when I'm sitting down with a record, I do kind of like to bring the lyric sheet out and just sort of like have a little go through. But I didn't think to on this one. I think it's because as well, one of the things that really surprised me about listening to this was I was kind of familiar with Anders' voice, obviously from Clayman and things. His scream on this is is noticeably lower pitched. Yep. Which took. Yeah, again, like I was quite surprised by it, as I didn't expect it. But it works well for this record, considering. Like, again, there's a nice sort of contrast almost with the music, which has sort of a nice sort of lilting folky quality to it, and then like his booming scream over the top of it. It's really kind of cool. But yeah, like it's just one of those things. I noticed it was a bit surprising to hear him be so, I don't know, like more typically death metal, I guess.
It's an interesting record. I think also it's the first one he has with the album, so he's probably just he's probably trying to emulate and usurp Stana, and he's not really got this space.
Trying to find his voice.
Yeah, he's trying to find his own voice. Because there's a couple of bands like Stana's the vocalist for Dark Tranquility, and there's a lot of swapping and things going on. But we'll get on to what I really like lyrics wiseness, because there are some that I think are cool. December Flower is definitely one of them, where it's just nice poetry. But I guess the other thing is it's a pretty low bar for metal lyrics.
Yeah, that is the case, isn't it? Like if you're not being overly theatrical and painting a weird Fantasyland picture, then that's kind of typically what you get. Or basically talking about blood and gore and guts and stuff.
Yeah, it's generally like hobbits or killing someone, or hobbits killing each other. It's not particularly highbrow stuff. But I like the weirdness of the lyrics on the Jester race.
Cool stuff. What else is worth having a talk about? Lord Hypnos.
Lord Hypnos.
Oh, Hypno. Not about the Pokemon, obviously.
Yeah, Lord Hypno. This one, the riff is so similar to Artifacts of the Black Rain.
Oh, yeah.
Really? Yeah. And I was like, I actually thought that Apple Music had malfunctioned or something. And I was going to hear the same song twice. But I think it's a better track than Artifacts of the Black Rain. I really like it. I like that.
It flows better, I think. The middle eight sort of like comes naturally, and you get the nice twinkly sort of acoustic guitars.
So it's like 1.5 minutes in. Like, let's put in an acoustic section. Drops into that. I really like that. And then I really like the way it brings the heaviness back in.
Yeah, you get a big double bass section, don't you?
Okay, that builds up, and you get you're nodding your head along, and then you get the classic Scandinavian metal noodling, and then you get back to the main riff again. And to me, I feel like this is what they were getting at with Black Rain, but they're still testing out the song format. And like, we've got this.
Yeah, this is basically that song executed better. But yeah, no, it's a really good one. I really like the dual guitar melodies at the end of the middle eight as well. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, there's just lots of nice bits to this one. It's a really nice flowing track. It doesn't have that, like you say, that unevenness to it that Artifacts did. But yeah, no, a really good one. What's it? Dead Eternity was a really good one because I like it. I
love the riff. The opening riff is so good, and then after 30 seconds, it goes away.
Yeah. It's like it has two introductions. So like you have that lead guitar like melody on the introduction, like the first bit in the introduction, and then like you get that bass led sort of breakdowny section with the spoken word, and then it comes back. All the instrumentation comes back together, and it's another massive riff. That's a really cool introduction to that track. I really enjoyed that a lot. And I noticed as well, like this one has kind of like a fast, like almost punk beat, like the snare, hi-hat, like the whole time. And I was like, and maideny, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a bit atmospheric and slower and bassier and weirder, and they do return to this idea There's a song called Satellites and Astronauts off Clayman, which is really, it's got like one of their all-time best solos, but it's kind of the atmospheric bit of Dead Eternity strung out into a whole song.
Yeah. There's a load of solos at the end of this one as well, which is really cool. It was like there was one, I was like, oh, that was a good solo, and then like they sort of did a little thing, played another riff, and then there was another solo. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough, we haven't done yet. I was just like, oh,
for some
having
reason,
a good time with this one.
I thought that there weren't a lot of solos in this album, but that was obviously not true because there's loads of them, and they're all really, really good.
I think it's because, like, again, like the melody is so strong, they interweave with the song really nicely. It just feels like they should be there. They're not forced. They're not like, right, let's have a big show-off solo moment. And it's just like, nah, there's none of that. It's very much like this solo complements the actual song that we've written, which is really cool.
There's so many good ideas in that song, and they all flow together really, really nicely. Everything in it's just quality. It all makes logical sense. It doesn't feel like they're throwing ideas at the wall. It feels like a really a coherent suite of ideas.
Absolutely.
But you're right, it doesn't have, the solos aren't the lead guitarist in the spotlight. We've got a fan on him to blow his long hair in the wind.
Yeah, no, definitely. It doesn't have that sort of theatrical nature to it. It's basically they're a part of the song. Should we move on? So we'll have
we're blasting through this so quick.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, I kind of like that it's flowing that way because the album is very much like that. You know, it's like solid song, really strong song after song. You know, it's just
the other thing.
You're not going to hear a lot of complaints from me on this one, to be honest with you.
The other thing that I find
really
interesting is the way a lot of the songs end. And I've complained about fade out intros, but I like that Dead Eternity goes, that's it. And it ends
Oh, there's always a definite end. Absolutely.
It often ends with Anders belting out the last bit. There's no like.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Next song.
Die again. You'll never be born again. You'll forever be stuck here in eternity.
It done off get its message across quickly. Speaking of which, like the Jester race as the title track, this is probably like the most traditionally like old school heavy metal song on the record. I think it's got a really sort of like Maiden-y style riff in the second verse that I really enjoyed.
Where we go, where we go, where we go, where we go, we're still so silent. Where we go, where we go, where we go, where we go.
It's about as close as In Flames get to a sing-along, isn't it?
Yeah, because the chorus is that, and we go. Yeah. Oh, proper, yeah. This is like the concert highlight. If you were going to go and see him around the time of this album's release, I can imagine this one being a big sort of fists in the air.
Fists and pints in the air. You would think that they would still play this live, but they actually don't. They tend to.
Really?
Yeah, well, whenever you go to see In Flames live these days, they basically pretend their entire back catalogue began with Come Clarity, so they don't play a lot of earlier stuff. You might get one or two tracks.
It's a real shame.
Yeah, you don't get any of the absolute face shredders like Embody the Invisible or Bullet Ride or any of that stuff. They tend to start with you would never hear anything off the Jester race.
That's really surprising because we didn't talk about it actually, but one of the reasons why we're covering this album is because Alan actually got it for me for Christmas, and he's got me like this deluxe version with some bonus tracks on it, and two of them are modern live versions of both Moonshield and Artifacts of the Black Rain, and they were really interesting to listen to actually because you can hear like Anders is using his his current voice almost.
It's slightly higher pitched.
Yeah. But it was, I was like, oh, okay, so they obviously still revisit the old material, but obviously that is not the case from what you've just told me. So.
No, they not anymore. I mean, I don't know when those tracks were recorded, but I imagine a few years later.
I mean,
but I don't think it was like last year.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, like the re-release that you got me was 2014, so I'm assuming there must be either 2013, 12, something new around that time.
Maybe they still play them in Sweden. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, maybe.
But Jester's race. The Jester race. It's got a similar intro to the Jester's dance, and then it builds up in intensity. But I like that. I like it's a lot more anthemic. It's
Yeah,
it's about
absolutely.
as close as you're going to get to a radio-friendly song before they became genuinely radio-friendly. And the solo's awesome in this.
Yeah, there's a
really good.
solo on this one. Oh, God. Yeah. Speaking of solos, we should talk about December Flower.
Yeah, we probably should, because it's my favourite solo of all time. So
Yeah, I picked up on this one, and I was just like, wow, that is a fucking wicked solo.
So there's a good story behind this solo, because it's not actually played by anyone in Flames.
Oh, okay.
So and this is where we get into the fun fact of the episode. So the solo is by a guy called Frederick Johansson, and that is not the Frederick Johansson from Dark Tranquillity. And this apparently gets confused all the time, as you can imagine. So he has played with a couple of In Flames side projects, like Dimension Zero, which is another Jesper Strongblad, and Bjorn Galata. Vehicle.
Yeah, I was looking at what like other bands they've done. I spotted Dimension Zero.
So the legend goes that he just went into the studio and nailed the solo to December Flower, which I have watched loads of people suffer at playing on YouTube, but I've only seen one person do it properly. Because December Flower is an interesting one, because it's actually one of the more forgettable tracks on the album.
You really?
Okay. Well, I think the lyrics are really good. I think they're standout. So I mean, I had them.
I really enjoyed December Flower. I was like, it struck me as like the heaviest song on the record for one. One of the things I really like about metal is tremolo pick riffs, and this one had one, so I love that. Oh, just really cool. And there's that. It brought back that really fast punk beat, which I really liked, with the sort of hi-hat snare. The lead guitar melody on this is I thought was really memorable, actually.
Oh, the opening riff is really, really great. But we can't understate enough that this is the best guitar solo. It's my favorite one ever. This is perfect. And what I like about it is that I like guitar solos that go on a little bit longer than you think they should, but not because they've got a bit more time they need to fill in. It's not like a jazz solo. It's like
no.
It's like, actually, this has just got so much more to go. We just play the whole thing in its entirety.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll drop it in here. Don't you worry about it.
Okay, good. Okay, so now you've listened to the whole solo, and you're an Flames convert.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
It's just so good. I can't even. It's really, we're trying to be relatively critical and have insightful things to say, but all I can do is make a certain scrunched up face and go, "It's so good, it's so good."
Yeah. No, I'm kind of in a similar way with you on this one. Like there was very few times where I was critically going, that probably didn't need to be there on this record. I was having a great time, honestly. It's a really strong album. We need to talk about Wayfarer.
Okay. You make it sound like Wayfarer just took a shit on your rug.
No, not at all. Because it's proper. Oh God, it's so cheesy. I love it. It's so daft.
I think Wayfarer is probably the closest we've come to a Dream Theater song on Cast Iron without actually covering a Dream Theater album.
Oh, so the producer Frederick Nordstrom is on this. As he's playing the keyboard, isn't he?
Yes.
And you can tell he's having a blast. It's proper sort of like, I can see a man playing a guitar on the edge of a cliff. I was having a great time with this one. He has like there's an early sort of like keyboard solo from him. And then I love the way the melody shifts. You get around 2 minutes, like the melody sort of gets really uplifting. And like power metal-y, I was like, wow, okay. It made me think like maybe this is why this song's instrumental, like because you couldn't pair screamed vocals with a melody that like positive, I think, and it would make it sound really weird. So I was wondering if like that might be the case of why there's no vocals on this one.
I think Wayfarer is the perfect name because it takes you on a journey, and I love that it starts off really crunchy and proper melodeath, and then after it's gone through the kind of the introductory riff, I guess it is, then you're into keyboard solo land, then you're into, that's what I'm saying, it's like a Dream Theater song. Because you've got a dueling keyboard and guitar solo. It's just this is I think this is probably the moment where I fell in love with In Flames. I was thinking, wow. And it also reminds me a bit of you ever listen to the Black Mages?
I haven't, no.
So the Black Mages is a Japanese sort of rock and metal band covering Final Fantasy battle music.
Oh, I am familiar with them. I haven't listened to them.
Yeah, I think Imatsu himself plays with them. This reminds me of some of the stuff off the first Black Mages album.
Oh, okay.
Because I think Imatsu's a bit of a metal fan. Like, there's definitely, I think, like, I mean, we could get into video games and metal episode. We probably should, because every Mega Drive game sounds like metal. Doom obviously sounds like old Metallica. But this, to me, if you listen to some of the first Black Mages album, like I'm trying to think of the tracks, so like Force Your Way and Find the Big Bridge, it's very Wayfarer-esque, but it's probably because they're all prog metalheads, and it's a very Dream Theater kind of thing. Yeah,
no, absolutely. It's a really cool track. I like how sort of bombastic it gets. It's one of the few times on the album where they go sort of proper OTT and have a bit of a laugh, and you know, it feels that the solos kind of do feel like they're showing off a little bit, but at the same time I was just like, it's too much fun, I don't care. But like in juxtaposition to that, I think the album closer, Dear God in Me, Dead God in Me, sorry, that one did feel like it gets a bit too wanky. In particular, the closing with the baby crying and then like the woman's scream, I was like, oh, this is so daft. This is what people take the piss out of metal for.
the end. Okay, so the last 30 seconds of the crying baby sucks, but I do think Dead God in Me is a good closer because it brings you back to the formula. It feels really energetic and it ties together nicely, and it's interesting because they basically stuck a back half banger at the end of the album.
See, I thought the mid-late on this one was a bit weak in comparison to the others, and I think that kind of that was the point where I was on the path to like, maybe this one isn't going to be my favourite. But I do like the way it kicks off. Again, there's a really good riff that starts the whole song, and it's pretty strong. It's just up until that mid-late, I just felt like the melody on this one isn't as good as we've had so far, and then when it came to the closing moments, I was a bit like, I could have probably done without that song. But to be honest with you, that's probably the only song that made me feel a little bit like, that wasn't a great track.
I think that's totally fair. It's not the best song on the album by a long way. It's still a good track. It's not a skipper. It's just
no. I think it's just one of those things. I was a bit like, okay, this one's a little bit too different. I think like it doesn't carry the same strength as some of the songwriting on the other previous tracks. But 9 out of 10 ain't bad.
yeah, not too many duffers. Okay, so I need to give you my random fun fact.
Go on.
So we talked about this band All Ends, which is Björn Gulata and Jesper Stromblad. The vocalists from the band All Ends recorded a song called With Me, which is on the Sonic and Black Knight soundtrack. God. It's the same vocalist.
God.
And I think one of them is either Bjorn, must be related to him, either his sister or his wife or something. So With Me has a vocalist from All Ends. So there's a tenuous Sonic in Flames connection.
I knew that as well.
I don't even know the song. I'm gonna have to listen to it afterwards. But Sonic and the Black Knight, I don't have high hopes.
It's your typical sort of butt rock, like pop rock kind of thing going on. But it's fun. It's fun. But yeah, God, I totally forgot about that. I didn't realise there was actual family connection with All Ends as well. So yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
Blew your mind.
There you go.
I was so pleased when I found that. Like, this just brings it all together nicely.
Absolutely. So, final thoughts then.
Well, final thoughts are, I went into this thinking, this is one of my favourite metal albums ever. And I left it thinking, this is one of my favourite metal albums ever. Yeah.
For me, I was...
Okay, yeah, so what do you think?
On.
So you're a first-time listener, so what did you think?
I think it's incredible. It's a really, really great record. Sorry, try and get my words out for a second there. I mean, like I say, my only exposure to In Flames previously was Clayman, which I think is a good record, don't get me wrong.
Clayman was really good, yeah.
But this just has something that's its own. I think, again, I was very surprised to hear that sort of folky quality to it, which I was really into. The melody is just so solid throughout the entire record. So many good riffs, so many good leads, so many good solos, which, again, I was kind of surprised by. The vocals, I didn't expect there to be the sort of lower pitched, but I really like them. This did a lot for me. It was... I get it. I get In Flames now. I think is the main takeaway from this.
It's all downhill from here.
But what I mean, it's obviously not their first record, but at the same time, I think it's kind of like their major label kind of debut-ish.
I think it's their first record.
It's a breakthrough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what a start to a great to a career. I think this is a really, really good release that I think if you like metal, you should probably check out if you haven't heard it.
I think that's fair. I'm pretty much on the verge of this is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
If you like metal, this should tick all the boxes for you. It's just so many good riffs. There's so many ideas in here that you could listen to it over and over and not quite. There's always something new that you find in it.
Yeah,
it's a constantly exciting album to listen to. And given that this came out in 1995, I know that's staggering. It's 20 years old and it's still fantastic.
I mean, production wise as well, it hasn't really aged that badly at all.
It's pretty good. I mean,
yeah.
It's a little bit. Production wise, there's a slight tinniness in the drums.
The tone is a little bit nasally, I guess, but it's a very minor
complaint
on, and to be honest with you, the songwriting shines a lot brighter than the production. So
and a lot of these old albums, the production isn't great, and you have to be forgiving of that.
Yeah, understandably. What would you recommend?
Okay. We're doing favorite tracks, or we're doing recommends?
Oh, should we do favorite tracks first?
I'm really going to struggle to guess your favorite track. Is it Wayfarer?
It isn't.
Oh!
I'm trying to think what yours might be.
I could have given you a definitive answer to this up until I listened to it again, and now I'm not sure. There could be anything, but there's one track that for me just slightly.
I feel like we might have the same favorite.
Is your favorite December Flower?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Yeah, it's my favorite
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
I was really, really enjoying December Flower. Which was again, like, I was surprised when you said, like, oh, it's not like the strongest like melody on this, but the solo's great. And I was like, oh mate, I was just enjoying it the entire time. It's a really good song.
But that's the thing, is that the solo is the best.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, I think that's my favorite. But there's loads of tracks. I love pretty much every track in this album. I think Windshield's great. Jester Race is a great track. Wayfarer is a great track. There's so many good ones. Like, there's no song in this apart from perhaps the crying baby at the end of Dead God. This is shit.
That was just daft. Like, it wasn't something that I would say was a negative or anything like that. It was just a little bit like too silly for me. And I wouldn't say that there was any song that felt like filler on this record. It feels like everything serves a purpose.
I think even the Jester's Race to me is definitely not filler, because I think it establishes
Jester's
this
dance.
is going to be a lot. Jester's dance is like, this is going to get a bit heavier now. This is giving an idea of the dynamics between the light and the heavy and the folky and the extreme.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think again it serves a purpose totally. Okay, let's now move on to recommendations.
Okay, so I've got two recommendations for you. The first is another In Flames album, which is Colony. So whenever we do the annual ranking of the In Flames albums, Colony is invariably somewhere near the top. And I think this is when their sound crystallizes.
When does that come in their timeline?
2000, I think. So it's after Horacle. So it goes Jester Race, Horacle, Colony, then Clayman.
There we go. Yeah.
1999, sorry.
Okay.
So it's 99.
So it's still pretty early into their career, I guess.
So this is the first In Flames album to feature the classic lineup. Björn Gullotta switched to lead guitar, and Daniel Svensson filled Gullotta's drummer role. You had Peter Ewers on the bass, and he was there up until he just left at the end of Battles. So this was the same lineup from 1999 to 2010. And it's amazing. It's kind of an album more about spirituality and religion, and it's good shit. It's good. Yeah, it's got something like Embody the Invisible is an absolute classic. Like, that's one of the best riffs I've ever heard in my life. Like, it's so good, and there's and also the one thing that says the deluxe edition is worth seeking out, because it's got a bonus instrumental track on it called Man Made God that is exceptionally fun. But there's so many good songs in that. It's a really, really fun album, and it's pretty much I would say it's a bit tighter.
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's fair.
Horacle is a really good album. Excuse me. Horacle's a really good album. There's a couple of weird songs that don't quite work the same way. And it's got ones like The Hive, and Colony is like every song in that's like The Hive off Horacle. It's just a really, really good album. So the second recommendation is one that came out, it was out last year actually. It's called Jom's Viking by Amon Amarth. So Amon Amarth they're a Swedish, they're a melodic death metal band, but you might confuse them with Viking metal because all their songs are about Vikings. And Jom's Viking is exceptionally fun, boisterous, loud, and it's got a real classic tinge to it. So it's a bit inflamesy. It's got a lot of classic Maiden influences into it. It's just a supremely good metal album. I don't know how you can listen to it without a smile on your face. So Colony here's where In Flames peaked. It's somewhere between, they just got the sound right without going over the rails, and Amon Amarth was like, well, what does this sound like today?
Okay,
and
that's cool.
We'll definitely cover a Soilwork album at some point, so we'll just keep the listeners in suspense for that.
I'm glad you picked a folk metal album, actually, because I did a very similar thing. So I picked Natford or Nightborn by Fintroll.
Oh my gosh, Fintroll.
Because it had that same sort of like lilting, sort of folky quality to it that permeates a lot of the music on this. It's a little bit like overblown in comparison to this. Fintroll are, very daft. I mean, they are a Finnish band that pretend to be trolls. So that was always going to be expected, I guess.
You're not going to have them round at your granny's house for tea.
So yeah, it's not as subtle as In Flames is the Jester Race, but at the same time, it does kind of do that folk metal quality music, but just sort of blows it up to up to 11 essentially. And then the other album I picked is it's kind of doing again a sort of like a crossover thing, but including that folky sound, but not with death metal, but more with thrash. So I picked Silosis's Edge of the Earth, which is their second album, and the first with Josh Middleton taking over vocals, and he has that same sort of like lower pitched growly scream, which is very prevalent on the Jester race. And you also have these very progressive songs that are heavy for a bit, and then there's like a sort of acoustic-y section, and the melody is very strong there. And yeah, it reminded me a lot of the Jester race, and I feel like that's it's a modern take on a very similar thing, but maybe doing it with thrash instead of the melodeath.
Awesome. Well, I haven't listened to either of those, so I can look forward to this as well. So if you have enjoyed this episode, you should tell all your friends. You should leave us a review on iTunes.
You should.
You can like and subscribe on Facebook and Twitter and get our banal tweets and Facebook updates. We have a new Instagram, because I said
yes, we do.
It's we are at Cast Iron Show on Twitter, we are Cast Iron Show on Facebook, and we are Cast Iron Show on Instagram. So you can look at all of my great gig photos and all of the photos for Lewis's ever expanding vinyl collection.
Yeah, that's definitely what's going to be happening there. So
yeah, but it makes sense because we're both on Instagram all the time and we love it. So if you like funky
absolutely.
pictures of cool metal stuff, do follow us and give us a shout if there's anything you want to see, anything you like. If you want to see Lewis's hymn collection before it breaks the shelves. But we will be back pretty soon, as in we're going to record a double episode because I'm going to Australia. But we'll be back soon with a new episode. But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening.
No worries. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.